Welcome to the Stewie Tune Show. This is Season 3, Episode 8. We've talked about the King before on this show, but did you know that Elvis Presley is the most imitated singer of all time? On today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at the people who pay tribute to the King. Are you ready to go down the rabbit hole? Because here are 10 things we think you should know about Elvis impersonators.
Welcome to the Stewie Tune Show. These are insights and commentary on the music and musicians that shape our lives. And now, let's go back to class with your hosts, Tony Stewart and Aaron Badgley.
Good evening, Mr. Badgley. How are you tonight?
I'm doing very well, Mr. Stewart. And how are you?
I am doing well. We got a big snow dumping here in just outside of Ottawa. So you guys didn't get snow, did you?
We got snow on Sunday, but today it's just in the last hours been pouring rain, so it's all gone now. So I didn't have to shovel. Yeah,
no, I've got about 4 or 5 inches of snow on my property here. So yeah, looks pretty.
I bet. Do you have your lights up yet?
No, I haven't decorated for Christmas yet. I got to do that.
Yeah.
But,
especially
lots
the
of
outside,
people have.
Yeah, man. Have you noticed this year? It's a lot of houses outside are very decorated. Around here, anyways.
Yeah, I think it's just the whole pandemic thing too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anything you can do to stay positive, for sure.
Let's do it. Yep. So
we have a fascinating topic today. And folks, I have to tell you, Aaron and I plan out the whole season, and then we end up, we have a weekly meeting, and we end up looking at our plan and totally changing it all the time because, it's as we get talking and we say, wait a sec, that would be a great idea. And this idea came up because we were talking about Elvis, and then the topic came around to, we should do a topic about Elvis impersonators. It's a fascinating rabbit hole to go down, and I can't wait to do this. Are you ready to get started?
I am, and I just want to make it clear that we're both Elvis fans. So this is
huge.
This is not a slag off on Elvis at all, but it's an interesting topic. The whole Elvis impersonating thing is just utterly fascinating. So
it is fascinating, and I was good Elvis impersonators. Of course they get paid and everything, but it's not about the money for them. They say it really is about channeling that the spirit of the King. And the good ones are simply amazing at it. It's incredible.
Oh, I agree. And thankfully with YouTube, you can see a lot of them around the world these days, which is always fun.
Yeah. And you can see all kinds of Elvises too. I mean, now there are female Elvises now. And have you seen any of the female Elvis impersonators?
I've seen a couple. Yeah. I'm very impressed actually. Yeah. It's cool.
Yeah. It's very cool. So, you know what? All the better. I think the more people get into Elvis, I'm all for it.
Me too.
So, you know what? We should go back in time. And Elvis became big in 1954. And the first Elvis impersonator came in 1954. So that's pretty incredible. Guy named Carl Nelson from Arkansas. And he was an Elvis fan, and he decided to cover That's All Right, Mama and Blue Moon of Kentucky in Elvis's style. So he technically is listed as the first Elvis impersonator, Carl Nelson. And what's even cooler is he actually performed with Elvis on stage at one point. So they struck a friendship as well. And Elvis has talked about that before, about Carl Nelson and his impersonation of him, and he loved it.
Elvis didn't he didn't dislike impersonators if they weren't being mean, right?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
He loved it, and right up until the end of his life, he enjoyed watching those, and we'll get into a funny urban legend later on. So yes, the first Elvis impersonator came shortly after Elvis became famous back in 1954. As crazy as that sounds. All right, what do you have next?
Well, I got a gentleman named Michael McTarget, better known as Subway Elvis.
Oh, you were telling me about him, yeah.
Torontonians know that. Well, Torontonians of a certain age know this guy because he used to. He'd be on the subway doing Elvis, and he would go up and down the subway, busking for money. And he did a very good Elvis impersonation. There's actually documentaries about him. If you Google him, you'll find him. But what's interesting about this guy? First of all, he did actually release a record
Oh,
a
wow.
single called "Now I Know," which didn't do anything. It kind of bombed. He was originally from Tennessee, by the way,
Oh,
Tony. Yeah, he wasn't from Toronto. He was from Tennessee, which makes sense. And he used to get busted on the subways all the time because it used to be illegal to perform. The days before you could get licenses and all that, you couldn't perform. But I find this interesting. He was actually falsely imprisoned for a series of trust company holdups in the late 80s. He was in prison for like 10 years. And I just have to ask you, when they interviewed the witnesses, were they going, he looked like Elvis?
that's right. Well, they do that. What about the lineup?
The lineup would be great. Uh, and did he thank them after? Thank you very much. Um, anyways, he was awarded $230,000 in damages, so he got released from prison, and the Ontario government had to pay him at that time. This is in the 80s, $250,000 for his time in prison, which I thought was
Oh,
interesting. Poor guy, right?
so when did he stop busking?
When he got arrested, he was still busking in the 80s. I saw him when I used to go to college. He used to be on the subways, and it was only when he got arrested. And it was in Halton, of all places. I mean, I don't, I don't know. Did he take the GO train out to Halton? I don't know. But anyways, yeah, he was arrested, and he stopped after that. And it's a pity because I think he was really good. He was very.
Oh, what a great story, though. So we're going to take a look at the urban legend that I was talking about. And I love this one. So, according to an article in the Weekly World News, which is, of course, a gossip rag, the Weekly World News, Elvis appeared at an impersonation contest at a restaurant shortly before his death and placed third. So he didn't even win. Now, of course, this story is false, and the Weekly World News is known as a rag, and this story has no truth to it. It's just a legend. But they think that the story may have been inspired by Charlie Chaplin, who actually did. Did you know that Charlie Chaplin actually entered a lookalike contest?
No, no, I
He
did
did,
not.
and he entered a Charlie Chaplin lookalike contest secretly,
Yeah.
and he didn't win. And they think that he came third. So perhaps that's where the urban legend about Elvis, going to an Elvis impersonation contest and coming third. But
Oh, I'm stumped at Chaplin, first of all. But what a great story, though, right, Tony? Can you
yeah,
imagine? I just love that story.
well, even just the fact that Chaplin didn't even win his own impersonation contest, that's
Can you
fabulous.
can you imagine? And then, wow, it's. I wonder, did that hurt his ego or did that help his ego? I don't know.
Yeah, who knows? All right, what do you got next?
Well, again, people of a certain age will remember this guy named Orion. His real name was Jimmy Ellis, American singer. Very similar voice to Elvis Presley. In fact, he recorded some songs, and instead of putting his name or Orion, they just put a question mark. And he continued the song after Elvis died, and there was rumors that he was Elvis. I mean, it got to the point where people thought maybe Elvis didn't die; he became Orion. He used to wear a mask on stage, so you couldn't
Okay.
see his face. And he recorded with people like Loretta Lynn, Jerry Lee Lewis. I mean, he had a career. I mean, this guy was doing pretty well. Um, and then he kind of wanted to make a name for himself, so he took the mask off, and he, of course, plummeted in popularity and ended up putting the mask back on. Uh, Sad end. December 12th, 1998, he was murdered during a robbery in his own store. It was a pawn shop. Both he and his wife were killed by a guy named Jeffrey Lee. And that was the end of Orion. Or was it? Sorry. I mean, we talked earlier in the season about Paul McCartney's death clues, right?
Yeah. Are
I'm
there clues to this as
Well,
well, or?
have you ever looked at the conspiracy that Elvis is still alive? But this guy helped fuel that fire because he did. If you go and listen to his tracks, he does sound remarkably close to. He's not Elvis. I'm not saying he is, but I'm always interested in the two theories. Right, one Paul died and there's a imposter. This one is Elvis didn't die and he became an imposter.
Yeah. But that has to be a conspiracy theory because Elvis, as we all know, lives in Tweed, Ontario.
We're going to get to that in a minute, aren't we? Oh,
Yeah,
yes, we are.
we'll have to touch on that maybe after the break. But you know what? You ready to take a break here?
Sure, sure. I am.
So we're going to go to our music history moment. And Aaron, I've got a John Lennon music history moment. So we are going to cut to break and we'll be right back. On November 28th, 1974, John Lennon made his last ever concert appearance, where he joined Elton John at Madison Square Gardens in New York City. Lennon performed 3 songs that evening: Whatever Gets You Through the Night, I Saw Her Standing There, and Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. His life ended tragically just over 6 years later, when he was assassinated on December 8th, 1980. And now, let's get back to the show. And we're back. And Aaron, you wanted to add something about this John Lennon music history moment.
That was a great music history moment, by the way. Well, I just wanted to ask you, do you know how it came to be that John was on stage with Elton John for that show?
I don't.
So Elton John was helping John with a song called Whatever Gets You Through the Night on an album called Walls and Bridges. And up to this point, John Lennon never had a solo number one. He was the only Beatle. Ringo had number ones, Paul and George. Even Imagine didn't make number one as a single. The album did, but not the single. So he said to Elton John, he goes, well, thanks for helping me, but, it's another flop for Johnny. And Elton John said, I'll bet you it makes number one. And John said, never in a million years. And Elton John said, I'll make you a bet. If it goes to number one, you perform with me at the Madison Square Garden show on Thanksgiving. And it made number one. So,
oh, wow. There you go.
So that's how John wound up on stage with Elton John.
Oh, that's a great story.
Yes, and that's also where he reunited with Yoko. Because they had been apart for 18 months, and Yoko was there, and
The rest is history, of course. So we are going to jump back into our Elvis talk, and the largest, because there are a lot of Elvis impersonators out there, and we'll talk about this later on, but the largest ever that we know of gathering of Elvis impersonators occurred on the 12th of July in 2014. This number astounds me, when 895 impersonators gathered in the Harrah's Cherokee Casino Resort in Cherokee, North Carolina. So can you imagine almost 900 Elvis impersonators?
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Imagine what that would have been like.
I mean, was that the year of the hair cream shortage?
Nice.
Thank you. I can't even imagine. I mean, that's the population of a small town, Tony.
That's right.
All Elvises.
Yep.
Are there photographs? Incredible. Are there photos?
I don't know. I'm going to actually, after we record tonight, I think I'm going to go take a look. I'd love to find a picture of that.
I have to see a picture.
We should, if we find a photo, folks, we'll put that in the show notes for sure.
Absolutely. So. Yep.
All right. What do you got next? We're down to number 5 here.
Yeah, this is a weird one. A gentleman in Belfast, born in Belfast, Ireland, Northern Ireland, James the King Brown. Now, James the King Brown is an Elvis tribute act, but with a twist. He does newer songs like Elvis. So he does Nirvana. He does Queen, AC/DC.
Oh.
For those of you, yeah. And he does them like Elvis. And he's put out, I think, I got to be honest with you, his first album, great album title, Graveland. What do you say after that, right? I mean, it's just a great album title. He did Crazy Little Thing Called Love. He did Whole Lot of Love.
Yeah, you sent me their Nirvana one the other day. That was hilarious.
Wasn't that great?
Yeah.
And he has a partner in crime, and I forget his name, but he does Johnny Cash in the same thing. He does Johnny Cash doing Joy Division and New Order. But anyways, so James the King Brown, and he's very popular. This guy's huge in Northern Ireland, actually all of Ireland. He's massive. And how I've discovered him, I listen to Irish radio when I'm working on the internet, and they played him.
Oh.
It was like, I'm hearing this song by Nirvana, and I'm thinking, that's not Nirvana. It's Elvis Presley doing it. And I'm thinking, how could that be? And sure enough, it was James the King Brown. So there you go.
Oh, very cool. So I've got a good one here.
What do you got?
Well, it takes a certain panache, to pull off a good Elvis impersonation. And there are 3 published how-to guides. And I actually happen to own one of these
I saw
how-to
the photo.
guides.
You know, are
Yep,
you going to talk about your?
I could. So the big one is called, of course, Be Elvis by Rick Marino, and I own that book,
Yes,
and
you
it it,
do.
it was a gift. Do you want me to tell a story?
I really do. I really, if you're okay with it, I love the
Yeah.
story. I love the story.
This story is ridiculous, folks. So I got that as a gift after I did an Elvis impersonation years ago. So when I first started teaching at the high school, the music program was so small. And on our first ever concert, that was my second year there. I mean, we had nowhere near enough material to even fill like an hour. So I decided, well, I'm going to do something. I'm going to say there's going to be a mystery guest. And I didn't tell anybody. And so, the audience just knew there was going to be a mystery guest. And it was me, dressed up as over the hill, heavy set Elvis. And I had one of my grade 12 kids dressed in a karate outfit, and he was my karate trainer because Elvis is a big karate fan. And the whole shtick was I got wheeled onto stage in a wheelchair because
Oh dear.
Elvis coming out of retirement, and then I hopped up out of the wheelchair and I was going to show my karate prowess, and I was talking in a pretty good Elvis voice too. And I told my personal trainer there to get out the prop, and so we had a big baguette, one of those French bread baguette things, the big long skinny ones, and I was going to karate chop that just to demonstrate that the king still had it going on. And this is in front of parents and everything else, right? It's so ridiculous when I think back about it now. But I went to live on stage, went to karate chop the baguette, and you know, I don't know if you've noticed, but baguettes have a pretty hard crust on them. And I happened to catch my palm
Oh
on a
dear.
piece of crust that was sticking out, and I ripped my palm open when I karate chopped it. So I'm standing up there bleeding, of course. And we just made it part of the shtick. And then I wrapped it, I put something around it to soak up the blood. And I sang a couple of tunes. And I'm trying to remember what I sang. I sang Suspicious Minds. And then I went down in the audience, and I think I did Can't Help Falling in Love with You and serenaded a couple of parents. And anyway, it was very, very funny. And
I think the image of you in a wheelchair karate chopping.
yeah, well,
Sorry.
I'd hopped out of the wheelchair at that point, and
Oh,
was doing like, remember the footage of Elvis doing his karate chops and
oh,
stuff before he'd go on stage. So I was doing all that stuff. And then I cut myself when I went to karate chop the bread. And it was as ridiculous as it sounds,
oh my
folks.
God.
It was totally hilarious.
And
But
what's sad is in today's world, that would have been captured on a phone,
oh my goodness, for sure.
right? There would be like,
Yeah, right now it's just an urban legend because people didn't have phones back then. So. But
oh,
yeah, great time. And a couple days later, one of the parents got me that book by Rick Marino as a gift, and it's a great book. Actually, it's very cool. So that's my Elvis story.
I love it. I mean, how do you top that? How do you top that?
Well, I'll let you try here.
I'm gonna
So
try. I'm gonna fail because I'm still getting this image of you, and the fact that you cut yourself on the bread. I know what you mean. I know that the crust is hard. I know that, but
yeah, it was
it's
just ludicrous. Yeah.
oh, the shtick is just brilliant. That's like a good Saturday Night Live skit. So, well, keeping with the humor, you know Stan Freberg? Does that name ring a bell?
No.
So Stan Freberg, he was a, folks, I'm only 56, but you'd think I was 100. He was big in the 40s and 50s. He had a radio show called the Stan Freberg Show, but he was famous for his parodies. And in fact, he had a #1 hit single called St. George and the Dragnet, which was Joe Friday searching for the dragon. It's very funny. It was a great parody on the TV show Dragnet and everything else. But he did a parody. He was one of the first people to parody Elvis Presley. And if you can find it on YouTube or whatever, he does Elvis. And during the song, first there's two things that happen. One is they keep increasing the echo. So by the end of it, it's just pure echo. And at one point, he starts singing, and he says, "I just ripped my jeans. That's the third pair today." It's a very funny, very funny. Elvis didn't find it funny. Just putting it out there. But it's folks, it's well worth your 3 minutes to find Stan Freberg doing Elvis. It's really, really, really very funny. At one point, he asks if someone could turn him off because of the echo. He's like, "Can someone turn me off?" Stan Freberg, comic genius, comic genius. Anyway, so that's. But you see, it's still no loaf of bread, man.
Exactly. Well, I think I'm laughing a little too hard here to carry on. So this sounds like a great spot for our second break, and we've got a very special birthday that we're celebrating because he is still with us. So here's our birthday segment, and then we'll be right back. Today, we're celebrating an important birthday. Berry Gordy Jr., the founder of Motown Records, turns 91. Motown Records started with the Miracles in 1957, but went on to sign some of the biggest names in the music business, including the Supremes, Marvin Gaye, the Temptations, the Four Tops, Gladys Knight and the Pips, Stevie Wonder, and the Jackson 5. The impact of Motown Records on rock and roll history can't be overstated. Happy birthday, Mr. Gordy. Man, it's hard to imagine, rock and roll without a guy like Berry Gordy. What a huge influence. And you had something you wanted to add to that, didn't you?
Well, it's kind of an interesting sidebar. He had a sister, has a sister named Anna, and Anna Gordy was married to Marvin Gaye. Now, unfortunately, they got married in 63. By 73, they had split up. And by 76, Marvin Gaye was wanted by the police because he wasn't paying child support or alimony. So it gets to court. Now, he's still signed to Motown. Keep this in mind, right? So the label owner's sister is suing him. The court says you have to do an album and the money goes to your ex-wife. So he did an album called Here, My Dear.
Oh my gosh.
He did. And one of the songs on the album is called You Can Leave, but It's Going to Cost You. I mean, it's a very bitter album.
Oh my.
And it came out of Motown, Tony. Like, oh my
wow.
gosh. It's just like, whoa. So yeah, that's my Berry Gordy. Have you been to the Motown Museum in Detroit?
I have not. I've never been to Detroit, so I'd like to go.
That's such a great tour, man. It's great. I highly recommend it.
Well, Hitsville, USA, right? So
yeah. Listen, I go again, road trip.
Yeah, for sure. In every episode we say, "Hey, we got to do an episode about that," but we do. There's another episode in the making, all about Motown, or even a two-parter. Man, that's fabulous.
100%, 100%. Love Motown.
So we are down to our final two. So I'll kick it off. And
yeah, go ahead.
So when Elvis died, there were about 170 Elvis impersonators. So it was a thing. And Elvis, as we mentioned earlier in the show, appreciated a good impersonation. But today, estimates range anywhere from about 250,000 to 400,000 Elvis impersonators.
In the world?
Yeah, in the world. And so that's a lot of impersonators. And in Las Vegas, of course, there are at least 6 wedding chapels in Las Vegas with an Elvis who will perform wedding ceremonies. So if you want to get married by Elvis, there's at least 6 of them there that will do that. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Oh my gosh. Oh. Yeah, I have nothing to add.
Yeah, like can you imagine 400,000
again
Elvis impersonators, right? Like
that's huge. That's a medium-sized city.
Yeah, and that I think it's cool how now you've got Asian Elvis and stuff, and like and female Elvis impersonators, and Elvis just resonates with a lot of people.
Absolutely, and there's also, I was just thinking, there's also been those TV shows. Kurt Russell played a young Elvis, and he did a pretty convincing young Elvis. There was a TV show. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
He knew Elvis, but there's been a few TV movies and things like that with people playing Elvis. Some very convincing, some not so good. But
yeah, but he obviously resonates with a lot of people.
He does.
So let's take it to our, well, you know what? Before we do our number one, we had said we were going to talk about that whole tweed thing. So for anybody who doesn't know this, there were rumors for years and
Years.
years and years that Elvis was living in Tweed, Ontario. And do you know, Aaron, about the Elvis Sighting Society? Have you ever heard those guys, about those guys?
No, I want to Google it though. So go
Okay.
ahead. I want to.
So that's an Ottawa thing. That started in Ottawa. You went to University of Ottawa back in
I
the day,
did.
right?
Yep.
Did you ever go to Moe's world famous Newport restaurant?
Of course.
Okay,
Of
so you
course.
was it decorated in Elvis memorabilia then?
Yes, it was.
So the first meeting of the Elvis Sighting Society was held at Moe's world famous Newport restaurant, and it became a thing, the Elvis Sighting Society. And in fact, at one point, I think the height of their fame, they got invited to appear on the Jerry Springer show.
No way. Are
Yeah.
you serious?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I didn't know that.
Yep. And
That's fantastic.
isn't that wild? So, yeah, the Elvis Sighting Society, and a free shout out to Moe's world famous Newport restaurant.
Is it
I
still
love
there?
that place. As far as I know, I mean, I don't know if the quarantine or the pandemic has affected it, but we used to go there all the time. The kids loved it.
Oh,
You know?
what's not to love, Tony? It's a great.
Yeah. And for anybody who hasn't been there, just imagine an old school diner, but just covered with Elvis everywhere. It's fabulous.
Everywhere.
And the menu is all play on words from Elvis songs, and it's fabulous, fantastic place.
I loved it.
Yeah. So number one, and I think we both agreed this has got to be number one.
He's number one, man. In my book,
Yep.
it's number one.
All right, go ahead.
Well, I'll mention his name, and actually, you told me that Elvis liked his impersonation of. I mean, Elvis approved of him, right?
Yes.
And of course, folks, we're talking about Andy Kaufman, the great. I mean, he was hilarious as a comedian, but his Elvis Presley impersonation, it just was, I think, one of the best ever. What do you think?
I think so. And they say that's like, if you want to learn how to be an Elvis impersonator, watch Andy Kaufman. Incredible. And his shtick though is he gets up there, right? He would get up there and do these really bad, awful impressions as if he was bombing, and then he'd say, I'd like to do an impression in that voice of his, of Mr. Elvis Presley. And he would turn around and start ripping off the sides of his pants, and he'd have the pants underneath and then, start combing his hair with his back to the audience. And he would transform in front of your eyes to Elvis Presley. It was,
and I think he got lost in that too. I mean, the downside was he got kind of lost with it. If what I've read is true, I mean, it kind of overtook him in a sense, which is a shame. But he was good, man. And so the only thing I liked as much as that was when he did Mighty Mouse.
Oh yeah. Well, he's brilliant.
Yeah, he was brilliant.
And his Elvis, though, I can't think of a better impersonation. And he, not only the singing, but the mannerisms, he was channeling Elvis. There's no question.
Even the face. He would do the facial. Like, he got the face down pat. And he did it out of love. I don't think he was ever making fun of Elvis Presley.
No, it was a tribute, 100%. Yeah, for sure.
He was a fan. He had to have studied film on this guy, right? Because
yes,
to your point, he did transform in front of your eye. His whole body would change.
Yes, yeah, because he would be, this introverted little guy who was on stage bombing up there, and he would turn around and start getting ready to be Elvis, and you would see him over the course of about a minute, I think, in these clips.
Yeah.
And he was, by the time he turned around, he was Elvis. And I was like, wow.
Yeah. Great stuff. Great man. Gone far too soon.
Yes, for sure. So folks, there you have it. 10 things that we think you should know about Elvis impersonators. And of course, we can't not tie this into the Beatles. So let's get ready for 6 Degrees of Beatlemania. All right, Mr. Badgley, hit me with some Beatlemania.
Well, you know that the Beatles were huge Elvis fans. And in fact, John Lennon once said there was nothing before Elvis. And he influenced the Beatles big time. Now, people know that the Beatles only met Elvis once. Ringo met him twice, but the Beatles as a group only met him once. And if you watch the documentary, I'm bringing this up for a reason. If you watch the documentary Anthology, you get 3 Beatles talking about the time they met Elvis. And they all have very different stories. So George says, I seem to remember coming into the room and he's sitting on the couch with a guitar. And then they cut to Ringo. Ringo goes, well, I thought we came in from the basement and he was watching television. And then Paul says, I think we came in through the kitchen and he was at the jukebox. And anyways, 3 very different stories. But the kicker was that what we do know is true is that at one point the Beatles just sat and stared at Elvis. And Elvis finally said, y'all got to say something or I'm going to bed. And that was the only time the 4 Beatles. Now Elvis, because he played Vegas so much, Ringo saw him in Vegas and Ringo met him at Las Vegas. But that's the Beatle connection, is that they only met him the one time and they were huge, huge, huge fans.
Yeah, very cool.
That's my Beatles thing. Yep.
Excellent. Can you believe that we're already wrapping up episode 8 here of this season?
All I can say is thank you for inviting me to be part of this, because this has been an absolute blast and it's just flown by.
Yeah, hasn't it? We've only got 2 more episodes
and you know what that
before
means?
The season's over.
But you know what that means? Christmas is coming. Christmas is coming.
And you know what? Because the Stewie Tunes show is the gift that keeps on giving, we have something special for you. We are going to have a Christmas bonus. So after season 3, episode 10, when the season is supposed to be officially over, we're going to give you 1 more episode, and it's going to be called the Christmas bonus. And we haven't figured out what it's going to be about yet, but we know the title. We thought the title was rather clever. So there you go. Well,
because you're a teacher and I'm a social worker. I don't get Christmas bonuses. So I'm,
Same here. So the Christmas bonus will be very, very fun, and that'll be a nice tradition to start too, I think.
I think so, yes. And you know what? It's a good year to start it.
I agree. So that's all we have for today. As always, please pass the word to your friends and family. Anybody who you think might enjoy listening to this show, they can find us on their favorite podcast app. Just look for the Stewie Tunes Show or visit us online, stewietunes.com. We've got all the episodes on there as well. Subscribing is always the best, of course, but that gives you first updates whenever there is a new episode coming out. And Aaron, it's been a pleasure as always. So until next episode, stay safe.
Be well.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to the Stewie Tunes Show. Follow us on social media or visit us online at stewietunes.com. And if you're enjoying the show, don't forget to click subscribe.